Welcome back to Sleepless Teacher, where your mind goes to wander in the dark. You think you know your own body. You believe your senses tell you the truth. But what if I told you that right now, there's a hole in your vision large enough to hide an orange, yet you never see it, that your ears create sounds that don't exist, that your skin can feel textures smaller than bacteria? Tonight, we're uncovering 50 secrets your sensory systems have been hiding from your conscious mind, from the mysterious fourth color dimension, to the magnetic compass in your brain, to the emotional touch fibers that respond only to love. Before we begin, hit that like button if you're ready to question everything you think you feel, subscribe for more late-night revelations, and comment, which sense do you trust most? Your body has been keeping secrets. Tonight, we uncover them all. Right now, as you read these words, there's a gaping hole in your vision large enough to obscure an orange held at arm's length, yet your brain ensures you never notice it exists. This blind spot occurs where your optic nerve connects to your retina, creating a region completely devoid of light-detecting cells. Rather than perceiving darkness or emptiness in this area, your brain performs an extraordinary feat of neural engineering that goes far beyond simple filling in the gap. Instead of creating false visual information, your brain simply doesn't process the absence at all, treating the missing information as if it never existed in the first place. This reveals something profound about how you actually see. Vision isn't passive reception of light, but active construction of reality. Your brain constantly predicts what should be in your visual field based on surrounding context, movement patterns, and memory. The blind spot demonstrates that what you experience as seamless, complete vision is actually a carefully constructed illusion. Every moment, your visual system performs millions of predictions and corrections, creating the experience of seeing a continuous world while your eyes dart around making several movements per second. Scientists have discovered that people with larger blind spots often have enhanced visual processing abilities, suggesting the brain compensates for missing information by becoming more sophisticated at prediction and pattern recognition. This hidden gap in your vision reveals the remarkable truth that seeing is less about detecting light and more about your brain's incredible ability to construct a coherent reality from incomplete information. Hidden within the eyes of over 50% of women lies a genetic gift that transforms their visual world into something resembling high-definition color television compared to standard definition. These individuals possess 4 types of color receptors instead of the typical 3, a condition called tetrachromacy that allows them to distinguish an estimated 100 million different colors compared to the 10 million that most humans can perceive. This extraordinary ability stems from genetic variations on the X chromosome, which explains why women are far more likely to be tetrachromats than men, who only possess one X chromosome. The 4th color receptor typically responds to wavelengths between red and green, creating an entirely new dimension of color experience that remains largely invisible to the rest of humanity. Recent research has confirmed the existence of functional tetrachromats who can actually use this additional color information, not just possess the genetic potential for it. These individuals can distinguish between colors that appear identical to typical trichromats, seeing subtle variations in what others perceive as uniform shades. Imagine looking at a field of green grass and seeing dozens of distinct hues where others see only one color, or observing a sunset with layers of color gradations that exist beyond the normal human visual spectrum. Scientists are still discovering the full implications of tetrachromatic vision, as these individuals often don't realize their color perception differs from others until specifically tested. This hidden sensory ability suggests that human color vision is far more variable than previously understood, with some people literally living in a more colorful world than the rest of us can imagine. Every single day, without your awareness, you spend approximately 40 minutes in a state of functional blindness, while your eyes perform an intricate dance of movements essential for clear vision. Your eyes make 2 to 3 large movements called saccades every second, plus thousands of tiny microsaccades. Yet you experience no visual interruption or blurring despite this constant motion. During each eye movement, your brain essentially switches off your visual system through a process called saccadic suppression, preventing you from seeing the blurred, streaky world that would result from vision during rapid eye movements. This temporary blindness lasts just milliseconds for each movement, but accumulated over an entire day, these brief moments of suppressed vision add up to a substantial period of time. The phenomenon reveals the extraordinary sophistication of your visual system, which must coordinate eye movements, predict where you're looking next, and seamlessly stitch together a stable visual experience from constantly moving inputs. Between each saccade, your eyes fixate on specific points for only about 200 to 600 milliseconds before jumping to the next location, meaning your detailed vision actually samples the world in discrete snapshots rather than providing continuous monitoring. Your brain fills in the temporal gaps between these snapshots, creating the illusion of smooth, uninterrupted vision. Scientists have discovered that during saccadic suppression, your brain maintains a memory of the pre-movement visual scene and uses prediction to prepare for what will be seen after the movement completes. This remarkable neural feat means that what you experience as effortless seeing actually requires incredibly complex coordination between eye muscles, visual cortex, and prediction systems that work together to create stable perception from an inherently unstable sensory input. Deep within your auditory system lies a mysterious ability to hear sounds that don't physically exist, creating phantom bass notes from nothing more than mathematical relationships between other frequencies. This phenomenon, called the missing fundamental illusion, occurs when you hear harmonics without their root frequency, yet still perceive the missing bass note as clearly as if it were actually playing. For example, when speakers play frequencies of 200, 300, and 400 Hz simultaneously, your brain automatically generates the perception of a 100 Hz fundamental frequency, even though no sound waves of that frequency are present in the room. This auditory magic happens because your brain recognizes the mathematical pattern in the harmonics and reconstructs what it expects to be the missing foundation of the sound. The phantom fundamental isn't just a curiosity. It's essential for music perception and speech understanding, allowing you to hear bass notes through small speakers that physically cannot produce low frequencies, and helping you understand voices over telephone lines that filter out fundamental frequencies. Your auditory cortex performs sophisticated pattern recognition, analyzing the spacing between harmonics to determine what the missing fundamental should be, then literally creates that auditory experience in your consciousness. This process reveals that hearing, like vision, is actively constructed by your brain rather than passively received. The missing fundamental phenomenon varies between individuals, with some people more sensitive to these phantom sounds than others, possibly explaining differences in musical ability and preference. Musicians often unknowingly exploit this effect, using instruments that emphasize harmonics to create the impression of deeper bass than is actually produced, while audio engineers use it to create rich, full sounds from limited frequency ranges. Hidden throughout your body, in places where you'd never expect to find them, millions of olfactory receptors are quietly detecting chemicals and influencing your health in ways that scientists are only beginning to understand. These smell receptors, traditionally thought to exist only in your nose, have been discovered in your heart, lungs, intestines, skin, kidneys, and even your brain, where they function as sophisticated chemical sensors monitoring your internal environment. In your heart, olfactory receptors respond to fatty acids and may help regulate cardiac function and metabolism. Your lung tissue contains receptors that detect airborne chemicals and may influence breathing patterns and immune responses to inhaled particles. Perhaps most surprisingly, Your intestinal olfactory receptors can sense the chemical composition of food and may play crucial roles in digestion, nutrient absorption, and gut-brain communication. These body-wide smell receptors represent an ancient sensory system that evolved long before dedicated smell organs, serving as your body's original chemical detection network. Recent research suggests that these receptors might help detect disease states, monitor metabolic processes, and coordinate physiological responses to environmental changes. Some scientists theorize that these distributed olfactory receptors form a kind of internal chemical internet, allowing different organs to communicate through molecular messages. The discovery has revolutionary implications for understanding conditions like diabetes, heart disease, and digestive disorders, as disrupted olfactory receptor function throughout the body may contribute to these health problems. Your gut-brain connection may literally involve smell receptors translating chemical information from your digestive system into neural signals that influence mood, appetite, and decision-making. This hidden sensory network suggests that your sense of smell extends far beyond your nose, creating a sophisticated internal monitoring system that helps maintain health and coordinate complex physiological processes. In a crowded restaurant filled with dozens of conversations, clinking dishes, and background music, your brain performs an acoustic miracle that computer scientists still struggle to replicate, effortlessly isolating and following a single voice while completely filtering out all other sounds reaching your ears simultaneously. This remarkable ability, known as the cocktail party effect, involves sophisticated neural processing that reveals hearing as far more than passive sound reception. When multiple people speak at once, all their voices create a complex mixture of sound waves that hit your eardrums as a single, jumbled acoustic signal. Yet your auditory system can unweave this sonic tapestry to extract just the conversation you want to hear. Your brain accomplishes this feat by using multiple acoustic cues, differences in voice pitch and timbre, subtle timing differences between your two ears that reveal speaker location, and even visual cues from lip movements and facial expressions. The auditory cortex performs real-time acoustic analysis, comparing the mixed signal against stored voice patterns, and using attention networks to enhance the target voice while suppressing background noise. Recent research has revealed that when you focus on one speaker, your brain's representation literally changes. Neurons begin firing in sync with only the attended voice, effectively erasing the neural signatures of unattended speakers. This selective attention mechanism is so powerful that you can remain completely unaware of dramatic changes in ignored conversations, including people switching languages or even leaving the room entirely. The cocktail party effect requires the coordinated activity of multiple brain regions, including areas responsible for attention, memory, and prediction, working together to create the illusion that you're hearing isolated speech in a quiet environment when you're actually extracting signal from noise in real time. Unlike almost every other cell in your body, your taste buds live fast and die young, completely regenerating themselves every 10 to 14 days in a continuous cycle of death and rebirth that allows your sense of taste to constantly renew itself. Each taste bud contains 50 to 100 specialized cells that detect sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami flavors, and these cells burn out quickly from their constant exposure to food, drink, and the harsh chemical environment of your mouth. When taste cells die, stem cells at the base of each taste bud immediately begin dividing to create replacements, ensuring you never lose your ability to taste even as individual sensory cells are constantly being destroyed and rebuilt. This rapid regeneration explains why taste sensitivity can recover relatively quickly from damage caused by illness, medication, or injury, unlike damage to other senses which may be permanent. The renewal process isn't random. Your body maintains precise control over which types of taste cells are replaced and in what proportions, suggesting that taste preferences might actually change over time as new taste buds develop with slightly different sensitivities. Scientists have discovered that this regeneration process can be influenced by factors like nutrition, inflammation, and exposure to certain chemicals, meaning your current taste experience may be shaped by what you've eaten in recent weeks. The constant turnover of taste cells also explains why taste memories fade more quickly than other sensory memories. You're literally not using the same taste receptors that originally experienced a particular flavor. Some researchers believe that understanding taste bud regeneration could lead to treatments for taste disorders and might even allow enhancement of taste sensitivity through targeted interventions that promote healthy taste cell development. Close your eyes and touch your nose. The fact that you can do this seemingly simple task reveals the existence of a hidden sixth sense called proprioception that continuously monitors the position and movement of every part of your body without any conscious effort on your part. This remarkable sensory system operates through specialized receptors embedded in your muscles, tendons, and joints that constantly send position information to your brain, creating an internal map of your body that updates thousands of times per second. Muscle spindles detect changes in muscle length and stretching. Golgi tendon organs monitor tension and force, while joint receptors sense the angles and positions of your limbs as they move through space. Without proprioception, simple activities like walking, writing, or reaching for objects would become nearly impossible, as you would need to constantly watch your limbs to know where they are and what they're doing. People who lose proprioception due to injury or disease must rely entirely on vision to move, carefully watching their hands and feet to perform actions that healthy individuals accomplish unconsciously. The proprioceptive system shows remarkable plasticity and can be trained to extraordinary levels of precision. Gymnasts develop enhanced body awareness that allows them to track their position while flipping through the air, while musicians develop finger proprioception so refined they can play complex pieces in complete darkness. Your proprioceptive accuracy varies throughout the day, decreasing with fatigue and potentially increasing injury risk during exercise when body awareness becomes less precise. This hidden sense also contributes to your emotional state and self-confidence, as people with better proprioceptive abilities often report feeling more grounded and physically capable, suggesting this internal body awareness influences not just movement but also psychological well-being. Deep within your spinal cord lies a sophisticated neural gate that can amplify, diminish, or completely block pain signals before they reach your brain, explaining why rubbing an injury makes it feel better, and how your emotional state can dramatically influence how much pain you experience. This gate control mechanism, discovered in the 1960s, revolutionized understanding of pain by revealing it as far more than simple damage detection. Instead, pain is actively constructed and modulated by your nervous system based on context, expectation, and competing sensory inputs. When you bump your elbow and instinctively rub it, you're activating large diameter nerve fibers that carry touch sensations, which can literally close the gate to smaller pain fibers, reducing the pain signal that reaches your brain. The gate isn't just mechanical. It's influenced by descending signals from your brain that can open or close it based on your attention, emotions, stress levels, and even your beliefs about pain. During emergencies, stress hormones can completely close the pain gate, allowing people to function normally despite serious injuries until the danger passes and the gate reopens. Your brain produces its own pain-relieving chemicals called endorphins, enkephalins, and dynorphins that can activate this gate control system, explaining why exercise, laughter, and positive emotions can reduce pain sensitivity. The gate can also become stuck in various positions. Chronic pain conditions may involve gates that remain too open, while some rare individuals are born with gates that never open properly, leaving them unable to feel pain and vulnerable to serious injury. Understanding gait control has led to innovative pain treatments including electrical stimulation, devices that activate the gating mechanism, mindfulness techniques that teach conscious gait control, and medications that target specific gait components rather than simply masking pain symptoms. Hidden within your brain lies evidence of an ancient navigation system that responds to Earth's magnetic field with measurable changes in neural activity, suggesting you retain vestiges of the magnetic sense that guides migrating birds, sea turtles, and countless other animals across vast distances. Recent groundbreaking research has demonstrated that when people are exposed to rotating magnetic fields matching Earth's strength, their brains show specific patterns of alpha wave activity that indicate unconscious magnetic field detection. This response occurs in the absence of any other sensory cues and appears to involve light-sensitive proteins called cryptochromes in your retina that create quantum mechanical reactions sensitive to magnetic orientation. The magnetic sense operates below conscious awareness. You can't actively feel magnetic fields the way you feel touch or temperature, but your brain nevertheless processes this information and may use it for spatial orientation and navigation. Individual differences exist in magnetic sensitivity, with some people showing stronger neural responses than others, and the ability appears to require blue light to function properly, suggesting it evolved as a visual magnetic integration system. Your magnetic sense may be partially suppressed by modern electromagnetic interference from electronics, power lines, and radio waves that didn't exist during human evolution, potentially explaining why few people report conscious magnetic awareness despite having the underlying neural machinery. Some researchers theorize that magnetic sensitivity contributes to your sense of direction and may influence circadian rhythms through interactions with Earth's daily magnetic variations. The discovery of human magnetoreception opens fascinating possibilities for understanding navigation abilities, directional sense, and even conditions like seasonal affective disorder that might involve disrupted responses to natural magnetic cycles. Your temperature sense can be fooled into creating phantom burning sensations through a remarkable illusion that reveals how your brain constructs thermal experiences from conflicting information. The thermal grill illusion occurs when alternating warm and cool surfaces touch your skin simultaneously. Instead of feeling the separate temperatures, you experience an intense burning or painful heat that exists nowhere in the physical stimulus. This happens because your thermal system doesn't actually measure absolute temperature, but rather detects changes relative to your skin's baseline temperature of approximately 32 degrees Celsius. When warm and cool stimuli activate different temperature receptors at the same time, your brain struggles to integrate the conflicting signals and defaults to interpreting the confusion as potential tissue damage, triggering pain and heat sensations as a protective response. Your body contains specialized temperature channels that respond to different thermal ranges. TRPV1 detects noxious heat and also responds to capsaicin from chili peppers. TRPM8 detects cold and responds to menthol, while TRPA1 responds to extreme cold and irritating chemicals. These channels can be chemically activated without any actual temperature change, which is why mint feels cool and cinnamon feels warm even at room temperature. The thermal grill illusion demonstrates that temperature perception is actively constructed by your nervous system rather than passively detected, and individual differences in thermal sensitivity can make some people more susceptible to these illusions than others. Understanding thermal illusions has practical applications for developing better prosthetics with realistic temperature feedback, and for treating chronic pain conditions where thermal processing becomes disrupted, creating persistent burning sensations without any actual heat source. Imagine seeing brilliant colors burst across your visual field every time you hear music, or watching letters and numbers glow in consistent, vivid hues that only you can perceive. This is the daily reality for approximately 4% of the population who experience synesthesia, a fascinating neurological phenomenon where stimulation of one sense automatically triggers involuntary experiences in another. The most common form, grapheme color synesthesia, affects over 1% of people and causes letters and numbers to appear in specific, unchanging colors that remain consistent throughout a person's lifetime. The letter A might always appear red, while the number 7 consistently glows blue. Scientists have identified at least 80 different types of synesthesia, including chromesthesia, where sounds create visual experiences, lexical gustatory synesthesia, where words trigger taste sensations, and even more exotic forms like sequence space synesthesia, where numbers and calendar units appear arranged in specific spatial locations around the body. Research suggests synesthesia results from increased cross-connections between brain regions that normally process information separately, possibly due to reduced pruning of neural connections during early development. Women are 6 times more likely than men to experience synesthesia, and the condition often runs in families, suggesting genetic factors influence its development. Famous synesthetes include musicians like Duke Ellington and Billie Eilish, physicist Richard Feynman, and memory champion Solomon Shereshevsky, whose extraordinary recall abilities may have been enhanced by his multisensory experiences. Recent studies show that synesthetes often demonstrate enhanced memory, creativity, and pattern recognition abilities, suggesting that cross-modal connections in the brain might provide cognitive advantages beyond the immediate sensory experiences, revealing synesthesia as a window into the remarkable plasticity and interconnectedness of human consciousness. One of the most mysterious phenomena in neuroscience involves the vivid, often painful sensations that 60 to 85% of amputees experience in limbs that no longer exist, revealing profound insights into how your brain creates the experience of having a body. Phantom limb sensations can include feeling that missing fingers are moving, experiencing itches that cannot be scratched, or enduring excruciating pain in feet that were amputated years ago. These phantom experiences feel completely real and can include detailed sensations like rings on missing fingers, shoes on absent feet, or the ability to gesture with arms that are no longer there. The phantom limb phenomenon occurs because amputation removes the limb but leaves intact the brain areas that represent that body part, and these neural regions continue generating sensations based on stored body maps and memories of how the limb used to feel. When areas of the brain that previously received input from the missing limb become active, they create the subjective experience of sensation in the phantom limb, even though no physical stimulus exists. Treatment approaches include mirror therapy, where patients watch their intact limb in a mirror positioned to create the visual illusion that the missing limb has returned, often dramatically reducing phantom pain by providing visual feedback that contradicts the phantom sensations. Virtual reality therapy extends this concept by allowing patients to see and control virtual representations of their missing limbs, helping retrain the brain's body representation. The phantom limb mystery extends beyond amputation. People born without limbs sometimes experience phantom sensations, while others who lose sensation due to spinal cord injury may retain phantom feelings in paralyzed body parts, suggesting that your sense of having a body involves complex interactions between genetic body maps, sensory experience, and neural plasticity. Deep within your consciousness lies a hidden sensory system called interoception that continuously monitors the internal state of your body, from the rhythm of your heartbeat and the depth of your breathing to the fullness of your stomach and the chemical balance of your blood. This eighth sense operates through specialized receptors embedded throughout your internal organs and blood vessels that detect changes in pressure, stretch, temperature, and chemical composition, sending constant streams of information to your brain about what's happening inside your body. The insula, a brain region tucked deep within the cerebral cortex, serves as the primary integration center for interoceptive signals, weaving together information from your heart, lungs, digestive system, and other organs to create your moment-to-moment sense of internal bodily state. Individual differences in interoceptive accuracy. Your ability to consciously detect your own heartbeat, breathing changes, or hunger signals correlates strongly with emotional awareness, decision-making abilities, and mental health outcomes. People with high interoceptive sensitivity often show enhanced emotional intelligence and better stress management, while those with poor interoceptive awareness may struggle with anxiety, depression, or eating disorders because they have difficulty recognizing their body's internal signals. Recent research reveals that interoceptive signals don't just inform you about your internal state, they actively influence how you perceive the external world, with subtle changes in heart rate and breathing, affecting everything from risk assessment to social judgment. Your gut feelings, literally generated by interoceptive signals from your digestive system, provide important information for decision-making that operates below conscious awareness but significantly influences choices and preferences. Training interoceptive awareness through practices like meditation, yoga, or body scanning can enhance this internal sensing ability and improve overall well-being by strengthening the connection between mind and body. Hidden within your inner ears lies an extraordinary motion detection system, so sensitive it can perceive head movements as small as 1/10 of a degree per second, constantly monitoring your orientation in three-dimensional space to maintain balance and spatial awareness even in complete darkness. Your vestibular system consists of 3 semicircular canals filled with fluid and lined with hair cells that detect rotational movements, plus 2 otolith organs called the utricle and saccule that contain calcium carbonate crystals, which shift with linear acceleration and gravity changes. When you turn your head, fluid in the semicircular canals shifts and bends hair cells, generating electrical signals that inform your brain about the direction and speed of rotation, while the otolith organs track linear movements like stepping forward or riding in an elevator. This vestibular information integrates with visual and proprioceptive inputs to create your sense of spatial orientation and coordinate balance responses. But it can also be fooled by conflicting sensory information, leading to motion sickness when visual, vestibular, and proprioceptive signals disagree about your movement state. The vestibular system shows remarkable plasticity. Astronauts adapt to zero-gravity environments, where their balance organs receive no gravitational input, while professional dancers and figure skaters develop enhanced vestibular sensitivity that allows them to perform rapid spins without becoming dizzy. Your balance organs continue working during sleep to help maintain posture and may contribute to dreams involving flying or falling, while vestibular dysfunction can cause not just balance problems, but also difficulties with spatial memory, navigation, and even reading. The vestibular system represents one of evolution's oldest sensory innovations, found in creatures as primitive as jellyfish, and continues to influence modern human behavior in subtle ways, from your preference for certain architectural spaces to your comfort level with various forms of transportation. Your fingertips possess touch sensitivity so extraordinary that they can detect surface irregularities smaller than a single bacterium, perceiving differences as minute as 300 nanometers through sophisticated mechanical interactions between your skin and microscopic surface features. This remarkable tactile acuity depends on 4 distinct types of mechanoreceptors embedded at different depths in your fingertip skin. Merkel discs detect fine texture and pressure. Meissner corpuscles respond to light touch and low-frequency vibrations. Pacinian corpuscles sense deep pressure and high-frequency vibrations, while Ruffini endings monitor skin stretch and contribute to proprioceptive awareness. When you run your finger across a surface, these receptors detect not just direct contact, but also vibrations transmitted through your fingernail and bone structure, creating a rich tapestry of tactile information that your brain interprets as texture, roughness, hardness, and temperature. Recent research has revealed that your perception of surface texture depends heavily on lateral skin movement and friction forces. Static contact provides much less textural information than active exploration through finger movement. The relationship between surface wavelength, friction coefficient, and perceived roughness follows predictable mathematical patterns, suggesting your tactile system evolved to extract maximum information about object properties through active touch exploration. Individual differences in fingerprint ridge patterns, skin thickness, and receptor density create variations in tactile sensitivity between people, with some individuals possessing naturally enhanced touch discrimination abilities. Your tactile sensitivity changes throughout the day and can be temporarily enhanced through certain activities or reduced by factors like cold, fatigue, or skin damage, while long-term tactile training can significantly improve discrimination abilities, as demonstrated by blind individuals who develop extraordinary braille reading skills through enhanced fingertip sensitivity. When one of your senses is lost or impaired, your brain demonstrates remarkable plasticity by reassigning the neural territory normally devoted to that sense to enhance processing in your remaining senses, creating extraordinary compensatory abilities that can exceed normal human performance levels. In people who are blind from birth, the visual cortex, normally dedicated exclusively to processing sight, becomes active during braille reading, sound localization, and even mathematical calculations, effectively recycling visual processing power for enhanced touch and hearing abilities. This cross-modal plasticity explains why many blind individuals develop superior auditory processing skills, able to navigate complex environments using echolocation techniques similar to those used by bats and dolphins. The rewiring isn't limited to blindness. People who are deaf often show enhanced visual attention and peripheral vision, while their auditory cortex becomes recruited for processing visual and tactile information. The critical period for optimal cross-modal plasticity occurs during childhood and adolescence, when neural connections are most flexible, but some degree of sensory substitution can occur even in adulthood through intensive training. Modern technology exploits this neural plasticity through sensory substitution, devices that convert visual information to tactile or auditory signals, allowing blind users to see through their skin or ears by learning to interpret new forms of sensory input. The brain's ability to rewire itself following sensory loss reveals that the traditional division of cortical areas by sensory modality is more flexible than previously thought, with many brain regions capable of processing multiple types of sensory information, depending on what input they receive. Understanding cross-modal plasticity has implications beyond sensory impairment, suggesting that multisensory training might enhance cognitive abilities in typical individuals by strengthening connections between different sensory processing regions. Approximately 25% of the population are genetic supertasters who experience flavors with an intensity that creates a fundamentally different relationship with food, detecting bitter compounds at concentrations so low that others cannot taste them at all. Supertasters possess genetic variations in the TASTOR38 gene that affect bitter taste receptors, along with higher densities of taste buds on their tongues, often twice as many as normal tasters, creating a biological amplification system for taste sensations. This genetic gift comes with trade-offs. Supertasters often find many vegetables unpleasantly bitter due to compounds like phenylthiocarbamide and propylthiouracil that others barely detect, potentially affecting their nutritional choices and food preferences throughout life. The supertaster advantage extends beyond bitterness to encompass enhanced sensitivity across all taste modalities, with supertasters experiencing more intense sweetness, saltiness, sourness, and umami flavors that create a richly detailed gustatory landscape. Women are more likely to be supertasters than men, possibly due to evolutionary pressures related to detecting potentially harmful foods during pregnancy, while the distribution of supertasting ability varies significantly across different ethnic populations. Supertasters often become wine connoisseurs, professional chefs, or food critics because their enhanced taste sensitivity allows them to detect subtle flavor nuances that others miss, though they may also be more susceptible to food aversions and preferences that seem extreme to normal tasters. The supertaster phenomenon reveals that taste experience is far from universal, with genetic variations creating dramatically different flavor worlds that influence everything from dietary choices to cultural food traditions. Recent research suggests that supertasting ability might be trainable to some extent through exposure and education, while understanding genetic taste differences could lead to personalized nutrition recommendations based on individual sensory capabilities. Your sensory systems possess a remarkable ability to automatically tune out constant, unchanging stimuli through a process called adaptation that prevents sensory overload, but also means you literally stop perceiving many aspects of your immediate environment within seconds or minutes of exposure. When you put on clothing in the morning, you initially feel the fabric against your skin, but within minutes, that sensation fades to unconsciousness as touch receptors stop responding to the constant pressure and texture. This adaptation occurs because sensory neurons are designed to detect changes rather than maintain constant signaling, which would quickly exhaust cellular resources and overwhelm your brain with irrelevant information. Adaptation operates across all senses at different timescales. Visual adaptation to bright light occurs within seconds. Olfactory adaptation to room odors happens within minutes, while adaptation to loud environments can take hours to develop, but also hours to reverse. The phenomenon serves crucial functions by enhancing your ability to detect new or changing stimuli that might signal opportunities or threats, while filtering out the constant background of familiar sensations that require no immediate attention or response. City dwellers demonstrate remarkable auditory adaptation, becoming unconsciously oblivious to traffic noise, construction sounds, and urban din that would be overwhelming to rural visitors, while their country counterparts adapt to subtle natural sounds that urbanites might never notice. Adaptation can be overcome through attention and conscious effort. Meditation practices often involve deliberately noticing adapted sensations like breathing, heartbeat, or the feeling of air on skin that normally remain below awareness. Understanding adaptation helps explain why people become nose blind to their own home's odors, why constant background music becomes imperceptible, and why changing your environment periodically can restore sensory awareness and appreciation for details that adaptation had rendered invisible. Every moment of your conscious experience involves an extraordinary feat of neural coordination, as your brain seamlessly integrates information from multiple senses to create unified perceptions that feel effortless, but actually require sophisticated processing across numerous brain regions working in precise synchrony. The superior colliculus, a brain structure that receives input from visual, auditory, and somatosensory systems, demonstrates multisensory integration by producing responses to combined stimuli that exceed the mathematical sum of individual sensory inputs, creating what scientists call superlinear enhancement. This integration follows the inverse effectiveness principle. The weaker individual sensory cues are, the greater the benefit from combining them, meaning your brain automatically provides the most help when you need it most in challenging perceptual situations. Neural oscillations, particularly gamma waves between 30 and 100 Hz, coordinate activity across different brain regions to create temporal windows for information binding, ensuring that sensory inputs arriving at slightly different times are perceived as simultaneous events. Your brain maintains remarkable temporal flexibility in multisensory integration, automatically adjusting for the different speeds at which various sensory signals travel and are processed, so that visual and auditory components of events like speech appear synchronized despite complex timing differences in neural processing. When multisensory integration breaks down due to neurological conditions, the results reveal how dependent normal perception is on this cross-modal coordination. People may experience difficulty with speech comprehension, spatial navigation, or basic object recognition when their brain can no longer effectively combine sensory information. Modern neuroscience suggests that rather than having separate sensory processing streams that later combine, the entire cortex may be fundamentally multisensory, with cross-modal interactions occurring at the earliest stages of sensory processing to create the rich, integrated perceptual world you experience as reality. Deep within your consciousness lies a mysterious sense called chronosption that creates your subjective experience of time's passage, operating through distributed neural networks that somehow transform the flow of physical moments into the rich temporal landscape of memory, anticipation, and present awareness. Unlike other senses that detect external stimuli, chronosption emerges from complex interactions between multiple brain regions, including the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which maintains your circadian rhythms, the cerebellum, which times motor actions, and the prefrontal cortex, which creates your sense of temporal sequence and duration. Your perception of time is remarkably flexible and context-dependent. Minutes feel like hours during boring activities, while hours vanish in moments during engaging experiences, revealing that subjective time bears little resemblance to clock time. The brain's time perception involves multiple overlapping systems: a millisecond timer for speech and music processing, a seconds to minutes timer for conscious decision-making, and a circadian timer that tracks daily cycles and seasonal changes. Emotional states dramatically influence temporal perception, with fear and anxiety stretching subjective time, while happiness and flow states compress it, possibly because heightened attention during emotional arousal creates more detailed memory encoding that retrospectively seems to have taken longer. Age affects chronosption in predictable ways. Children experience time more slowly because each moment represents a larger fraction of their total life experience, while adults find time accelerating as familiar routines create fewer distinctive memories to mark temporal passage. Disruptions to chronosption occur in various neurological and psychiatric conditions, with depression typically causing time to feel slowed or frozen, while mania creates a sense of racing time, revealing how intimately temporal perception connects to mood, attention, and consciousness itself. Across virtually every human culture and language, people automatically associate certain sounds with specific shapes in a phenomenon called the Bourbaki effect that reveals deep, universal connections between different sensory modalities in your brain. When shown abstract shapes, one with rounded, flowing curves and another with sharp, angular points, people consistently name the rounded shape Bauba and the spiky shape Kiki, even though these are nonsense words with no learned cultural associations. This cross-modal correspondence occurs because your brain processes certain acoustic and visual features through overlapping neural pathways that create automatic synesthetic-like connections between sounds and shapes. The sharp consonants in Kiki, activate similar neural patterns to those triggered by angular visual edges, while the rounded vowels in bauba correspond to the smooth processing of curved shapes, suggesting that language and vision share fundamental organizational principles. The Baubakiki effect appears in infants as young as 4 months old, demonstrating that these cross-modal mappings are present from early development rather than learned through experience. And the phenomenon persists even in people who are born blind, indicating that the shape-sound connections don't require visual experience to develop. Similar cross-modal correspondences exist throughout human perception. Bright colors are associated with higher pitches, small objects with high-frequency sounds, and rough textures with jagged visual patterns, revealing a rich network of automatic sensory associations that influence everything from product naming and marketing to artistic expression and emotional responses. These universal mappings suggest that your sensory systems evolved not as separate, independent channels, but as integrated networks designed to detect patterns and relationships across different types of environmental information, creating a more coherent and predictable perceptual world. While you remain consciously aware of only a tiny fraction of the sensory information reaching your nervous system, your brain continuously processes massive amounts of unconscious sensory data that influences your behavior, emotions, and decisions in ways that operate completely below the threshold of awareness. Subliminal visual stimuli flashed too briefly for conscious recognition can still affect your preferences, mood, and subsequent choices, demonstrating that significant sensory processing occurs without conscious participation. Your unconscious mind can integrate information from multiple senses simultaneously. Studies show that people can unconsciously combine visual and auditory information, even when one of the sensory inputs remains below conscious detection thresholds, challenging traditional theories about consciousness being necessary for multisensory binding. The phenomenon of inattentional blindness reveals how selective your conscious awareness really is. You can completely fail to notice large, obvious changes in your visual environment when your attention is focused elsewhere, even though your unconscious visual system continues processing all the information. Change blindness experiments demonstrate that you often miss dramatic alterations to scenes during brief visual interruptions, revealing that your sense of seeing everything is largely an illusion created by the small spotlight of conscious attention, moving around a much larger field of unconscious processing. Your unconscious sensory systems continue operating during sleep, processing sounds, touches, and other stimuli that can influence dream content, trigger awakening responses, or even enable limited learning of simple associations. The cocktail party effect shows how your unconscious auditory processing can simultaneously monitor multiple conversations while your consciousness focuses on just one speaker, occasionally breaking through to awareness when personally relevant information like your name is mentioned in an unattended conversation stream. Every time you eat, you experience flavor through two distinctly different smell pathways that create fundamentally different sensory experiences. Orthonasal olfaction through breathing in through your nose, and retronasal olfaction through odors that travel from your mouth up through the back of your nasal cavity during chewing and swallowing. These two olfactory routes process the same molecules but create entirely different perceptual experiences. Orthonasal olfaction helps you identify and locate food sources in your environment, while retronasal olfaction creates the rich flavor experiences that make eating pleasurable and help you evaluate food safety and nutritional content. Professional wine tasters and perfumers must train both pathways separately because they provide different types of information about the same aromatic compounds, with orthonasal smell being more analytical and retronasal smell being more integrated with taste and texture sensations. When you have a stuffy nose, you lose primarily retronasal olfaction, which is why food tastes bland even though you can still smell foods when you sniff them directly. The blockage prevents food aromas from reaching your olfactory receptors through the retronasal route during eating. The dual pathway system evolved to solve different adaptive problems. Orthonasal olfaction helps you assess food before consumption to avoid spoiled or toxic substances, while retronasal olfaction monitors food quality during consumption and contributes to satiety signals that tell you when you've eaten enough. Cultural differences in cuisine and flavor preferences may partly reflect different emphasis on training these two olfactory pathways, with some culinary traditions emphasizing aromatic presentation that enhances orthonasal smell, while others focus on complex flavor combinations that maximize retronasal experiences. Understanding the distinction between these two smell pathways helps explain why reheated food often tastes different from fresh food, why certain cooking techniques enhance flavors more than others, and why eating experiences can vary dramatically depending on nasal congestion, breathing patterns, and even posture during meals. Your conscious sensory experience results from a sophisticated attention system that acts like a flexible spotlight, selectively illuminating certain sensory inputs while leaving others in the darkness of unconscious processing, creating the illusion that you perceive everything when you actually notice only a tiny fraction of available sensory information. This attentional spotlight can expand or contract depending on task demands. During focused activities like reading, attention narrows to exclude distracting stimuli, while during vigilant scanning for potential threats, attention broadens to monitor a wider range of sensory inputs simultaneously. The cocktail party effect demonstrates attention's remarkable selectivity. Your auditory system can completely filter out multiple conversations while enhancing just the voice you choose to follow, with neural recordings showing that unattended voices literally disappear from cortical representation, while attended speech becomes amplified and clarified. Load-dependent processing means that your capacity for noticing multiple stimuli depends on how much mental effort your primary task requires. Under high cognitive load, attention becomes more selective, and you're more likely to miss obvious changes in your environment, while low-load situations allow broader sensory monitoring. Your brain maintains multiple attention systems working simultaneously. Exogenous attention automatically captures focus when sudden changes occur in your environment, while endogenous attention allows voluntary control over where you direct sensory focus based on goals and expectations. Attention operates across all senses, not just vision. You can selectively attend to specific sounds in complex auditory environments, focus on particular touch sensations while ignoring others, or direct attention to specific flavors or aromas during eating experiences. Individual differences in attentional control affect everything from academic performance to social sensitivity, with some people naturally better at maintaining focus, while others excel at noticing peripheral details that focused individuals miss. Hidden within the hairy skin covering most of your body lies a recently discovered network of specialized nerve fibers called C-tactile afferents that respond exclusively to gentle, slow-moving touch like caresses, hugs, and tender contact, revealing a dedicated neural pathway for processing the emotional and social aspects of touch sensation. Unlike the fast-conducting fibers that carry information about pressure, texture, and precise touch location to your somatosensory cortex, C-tactile fibers conduct signals slowly and project to the insular cortex and other brain regions associated with emotion, suggesting they evolved specifically to process the effective meaning of touch rather than its physical properties. These emotional touch receptors respond optimally to stroking movements at speeds of 1 to 10 centimeters per second, temperatures close to human body heat, and light pressures typical of social touching, indicating they're specifically tuned to detect human contact rather than general tactile exploration. C-tactile touch plays crucial roles in bonding, attachment, and emotional regulation throughout life, from the essential skin-to-skin contact between parents and infants that promotes healthy development to the comforting touches between friends and romantic partners that reduce stress and strengthen social connections. People with rare conditions affecting C-tactile function report that touch feels purely mechanical and loses its emotional warmth and pleasantness, revealing how these special fibers contribute to the rewarding and comforting aspects of physical contact that most people take for granted. The discovery of C-tactile afferents helps explain why massage therapy, pet therapy, and other touch-based interventions have measurable effects on mood, stress hormones, and overall well-being. These treatments likely work by activating the emotional touch system rather than just providing mechanical stimulation. Cultural variations in touch customs and personal differences in touch sensitivity may partly reflect individual variations in C-tactile sensitivity, influencing everything from social comfort levels to therapeutic responsiveness to touch-based treatments. Rather than passively receiving sensory information, your brain operates as a sophisticated prediction machine that constantly generates expectations about what you should sense next, comparing these predictions against actual sensory input, and using the differences to update your internal models of the world. This predictive processing occurs at every level of your nervous system, from basic reflexes that anticipate muscle stretch to complex perceptual systems that predict the visual consequences of eye movements, creating a hierarchy of expectations that shape your entire sensory experience. When your predictions match incoming sensory data, your brain efficiently processes the expected information with minimal neural activity. But when mismatches occur, prediction errors cascade up through neural networks, capturing attention and driving learning to improve future predictions. The rubber hand illusion demonstrates predictive processing in action. When you watch a fake hand being stroked, while your real hand receives identical touches, your brain predicts that the visual and tactile sensations should match, gradually incorporating the rubber hand into your body representation until you feel ownership of the artificial limb. Musical appreciation follows predictive principles, with your brain finding pleasure in compositions that balance predictability and surprise, creating reward signals when musical events violate expectations in aesthetically pleasing ways. Predictive processing explains many perceptual phenomena: why moving objects appear to lag behind their actual positions, why stopped clocks seem to pause longer than normal, and why familiar environments seem smaller when revisited after long absences. Mental health conditions may involve disrupted predictive processing, with anxiety potentially reflecting overactive error signals that make the world seem unpredictable and threatening, while depression might involve underactive prediction systems that reduce engagement with environmental opportunities and rewards. The Western assumption that vision reigns supreme over all other senses, followed by hearing, touch, taste, and smell, turns out to be far from universal, with some cultures showing completely opposite sensory hierarchies that excel at smell communication while struggling with visual descriptions. Research across 20 diverse languages found dramatic cultural variations in sensory communication abilities, with some hunter-gatherer groups possessing rich vocabularies for describing odors and teaching children to identify hundreds of different scents, while showing little interest in detailed visual description that Western cultures emphasize. The Anji people of the Andaman Islands organize their entire temporal system around olfactory cycles, using the blooming and scent patterns of different flowers to mark seasons and time periods in ways that seem almost magical to vision-dominated cultures. Manic speakers in Thailand can communicate about smells as easily and precisely as English speakers discuss colors, with specialized vocabulary and cultural practices that treat olfactory information as fundamental to understanding their environment. These cultural differences reflect deep variations in attention, education, and value systems, rather than biological differences in sensory capabilities, suggesting that human sensory potential is much more flexible and trainable than most people realize. Asian and Western cultures show different cross-modal associations between colors, flavors, and emotions, with cultural learning shaping the automatic connections your brain makes between different types of sensory information. Touch customs vary dramatically between cultures in terms of acceptable contact, personal space preferences, and the social meanings attached to different types of physical contact, influencing everything from business interactions to therapeutic relationships. The sensory hierarchy differences have practical implications for international communication, product design, and educational approaches, suggesting that effective cross-cultural interaction requires understanding not just different languages, but different ways of sensing and attending to the world. One of the most remarkable feats your brain performs every moment involves binding together sensory information that arrives at vastly different times to create unified perceptions of simultaneous events, solving what neuroscientists call the temporal binding problem through mechanisms that remain partially mysterious. When you watch someone speak, light from their lip movements reaches your eyes almost instantaneously, while sound waves from their voice take additional milliseconds to travel through air. Yet you perceive perfect audiovisual synchrony because your brain automatically adjusts for these timing differences. This temporal calibration operates differently for various combinations of senses. Your brain maintains separate timing adjustments for visual auditory synchrony, visual tactile coordination, and other cross-modal pairings, suggesting multiple specialized temporal binding systems. The brain's temporal flexibility extends beyond simple delays to include more complex adjustments. When audiovisual events are slightly out of sync, your perceptual system often pulls the timing of one modality toward the other through temporal ventriloquism, creating an illusion of synchrony when none exists physically. Neural oscillations, particularly gamma waves between 30 and 100 Hz, appear to coordinate this temporal binding by creating rhythmic windows during which different sensory inputs can be integrated into unified conscious experiences. Your temporal binding abilities can be trained and modified through experience. People who work with audiovisual equipment develop more precise temporal sensitivity, while certain neurological conditions can disrupt temporal binding and cause sensory experiences to feel fragmented or disconnected. The mechanisms underlying temporal binding may involve predictive processing, with your brain using learned timing relationships to anticipate when different sensory components of events should arrive and actively constructing temporal unity from inherently asynchronous inputs. Understanding temporal binding has practical applications for designing virtual reality systems, improving audiovisual media experiences, and developing treatments for conditions where temporal perception becomes disrupted. Your sensory systems create fundamentally different types of memories with dramatically varying lifespans, storage capacities, and retrieval characteristics that reveal how each sense contributes uniquely to your overall memory architecture. Visual sensory memory, called iconic memory, lasts only about half a second but can hold enormous amounts of detailed information. You can briefly see complete visual scenes in perfect detail before the information rapidly fades unless transferred to working memory through attention. Auditory sensory memory, known as echoic memory, persists much longer than visual memory, lasting 3 to 4 seconds, and allowing you to mentally replay recent sounds, which explains why you can sometimes answer a question you thought you didn't hear by mentally replaying the auditory trace. Olfactory memories show completely different characteristics, often lasting for decades with remarkable vividness and emotional intensity despite being difficult to describe verbally, suggesting that smell connects to memory systems through different neural pathways than other senses. Touch memories vary greatly depending on the type of tactile information. Memories for texture and pressure fade quickly, while memories for pain can persist with disturbing clarity, possibly because pain memories serve important survival functions by helping you avoid future tissue damage. The phenomenon of state-dependent learning shows that memories formed in the presence of particular sensory contexts are best recalled when those same sensory conditions are present again, explaining why certain smells or sounds can trigger vivid autobiographical memories from years or decades in the past. Each sense appears to have evolved different memory characteristics suited to its adaptive functions. Vision needs rapid updating to track environmental changes. Hearing benefits from brief persistence to integrate speech sounds, while smell requires long-term storage to remember food safety and location information across extended time periods. Modern sensory substitution devices demonstrate your brain's remarkable plasticity by converting information from one sensory modality to another, allowing blind individuals to literally see through their ears or skin, and revealing the fundamental flexibility of human sensory processing. The voice system translates visual scenes into complex soundscapes where brightness becomes loudness, height corresponds to pitch, and left-right positions map to stereo audio channels, enabling trained users to navigate complex environments, recognize faces, and even read text through auditory information alone. Brainport technology converts visual input into tactile patterns on the tongue, where a grid of electrodes creates spatial touch sensations that the brain learns to interpret as visual information, demonstrating that traditional sensory boundaries are far more flexible than previously understood. These devices work because your brain doesn't process sensory information according to which sense organ it came from, but rather according to the patterns and relationships within the information itself, allowing visual processing areas to adapt to auditory or tactile input when properly formatted. Training with sensory substitution devices typically requires weeks to months of practice, during which users gradually develop new neural pathways and perceptual skills that can eventually become as automatic and effortless as normal sensory processing. Recent advances include haptic feedback systems that provide rich tactile information to prosthetic users, allowing them to feel texture, pressure, and temperature through artificial limbs, while spatial haptics can convey distance and object location through carefully designed vibration patterns. The success of sensory substitution reveals that your brain's sensory processing is fundamentally about pattern recognition and information integration, rather than being locked into specific sensory channels, opening possibilities for enhancing normal human sensory abilities, or creating entirely new forms of perception through technological interfaces. Your visual system contains powerful pattern recognition mechanisms that automatically search for meaningful shapes and familiar objects in random or ambiguous visual information, creating the phenomenon of pareidolia, where you see faces in clouds, animals in rock formations, or religious figures in everyday objects. This perceptual tendency reflects your brain's evolution-honed ability to quickly detect important patterns like faces, predators, or food sources, even when visual information is incomplete, unclear, or partially obscured by environmental conditions. Face pareidolia appears to be particularly strong because recognizing other humans has been crucial for survival and social interaction throughout evolutionary history, leading to specialized neural circuits in the fusiform face area that remain highly active and sensitive to face-like patterns even in non-face stimuli. The strength of pareidolia experiences varies significantly between individuals, with some people reporting frequent and vivid pattern perception in random stimuli, while others rarely notice such patterns, possibly reflecting differences in top-down processing, creativity, or neural connectivity between perception and imagination systems. Cultural factors influence what types of patterns people tend to see, with religious pareidolia often involving figures and symbols that are culturally significant to the observer, suggesting that learned expectations and beliefs shape how pattern recognition systems interpret ambiguous visual information. Pareidolia extends beyond vision to include auditory pattern recognition, where people hear voices, music, or meaningful sounds in random noise, and tactile pareidolia, where random touch sensations are interpreted as familiar textures or shapes. Understanding pareidolia has practical applications for designing user interfaces, creating effective camouflage, and developing diagnostic tools that use pattern recognition tasks to assess perceptual and cognitive function, while also providing insights into creativity, imagination, and the relationship between perception and expectation. What you experience as a single, unified flavor when eating is actually an elaborate construction project involving all 5 traditional senses plus memories, expectations, and even social context, revealing that flavor exists primarily in your brain rather than in the food itself. True taste, detected by receptors on your tongue, contributes only 5 basic sensations: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami, while the rich complexity you call flavor comes primarily from retronasal olfaction as aromatic molecules travel from your mouth to nasal receptors during chewing and swallowing. The trigeminal nerve adds crucial textural and temperature information that influences flavor perception, explaining why the same food can taste dramatically different when served hot versus cold, or when its texture is altered through different preparation methods. Visual appearance powerfully influences flavor expectations and actual taste perception, with food coloring experiments showing that people consistently rate identical foods as tasting different when they look different, demonstrating that seeing literally changes tasting. Sound plays a surprising role in flavor construction, with research showing that the crunchiness of potato chips affects perceived freshness and flavor intensity, while background music can enhance or diminish specific taste sensations through cross-modal sensory interactions. Memory and expectation contribute significantly to flavor through top-down processing, where your brain uses past experiences and current context to interpret ambiguous taste and smell signals, explaining why comfort foods often taste better in familiar environments, and why expensive wines are rated more favorably even in blind tastings when price information is provided beforehand. The social context of eating, who you're with, the setting, cultural meanings, can dramatically alter flavor perception through psychological mechanisms that influence how your brain constructs the eating experience, revealing flavor as one of the most multisensory and context-dependent aspects of human perception. Your brain automatically combines visual and auditory information when processing speech, creating the remarkable McGurk effect, where watching someone's lip movements can completely change what you hear them saying, even when the audio remains identical. When you hear the sound ba, while watching lips form the movement for ga, your brain often perceives da, a compromised sound that represents your auditory system's attempt to reconcile conflicting visual and auditory speech information. This multisensory speech processing occurs automatically and unconsciously, demonstrating that hearing isn't purely auditory, but involves sophisticated integration of visual lip-reading information that most people don't realize they're using constantly during normal conversation. The McGurk effect, reveals why communication becomes more difficult when you can't see someone's face, such as during phone conversations or when speakers wear masks, as your brain loses access to crucial visual speech cues that normally enhance auditory comprehension. Individual differences in McGurk effect susceptibility correlate with overall multisensory integration abilities, with some people showing strong visual influence on auditory perception, while others rely more heavily on auditory information alone, possibly reflecting different learning experiences or neural connectivity patterns. The effect demonstrates cultural variations, with speakers of different languages showing varying degrees of visual influence on speech perception, suggesting that the visual auditory integration for speech is partially learned through exposure to specific linguistic environments during development. Understanding the McGurk effect has practical implications for speech therapy, hearing aid design, and language learning, as it reveals the importance of visual speech cues for communication and suggests that effective speech interventions should address both auditory and visual components of speech processing. The phenomenon also explains why dubbed movies often feel slightly off even when synchronization appears perfect, as subtle mismatches between lip movements and speech sounds create unconscious conflicts in your speech processing.